we are going to see about pro tips of application servers, and we'll be seeing what type of application performance monitoring that can be done through Applications Manager. The agenda for today would be analyzing memory and thread details to isolate various types of performance issues, monitoring JDBC, servlets, and detection of failures on process and services, configuring automated actions for Java applications. So for example, in a server monitor, we support Windows service restart action. Similarly, we have some automated actions to trigger thread dump, heap dump, and perform garbage collection for Java applications. So we'll be seeing how to do that. And finally, we'll end up with configuring reports, how to generate alerts from the product, and how to create custom dashboards. So over this course of webinar, if you have any queries, do let us know. Our panelists are available online. They will help you in answering those questions to you. Through Applications Manager, we support all the top applications which are widely used by our customers worldwide, which is like JBoss, Tomcat, WebLogic, Oracle Application Server, IBM WebSphere. So the important point which has to be noted over here is the product is completely agentless. So there is no agent required to collect data from any of this application server. So when we talk about agentless monitoring, you might have a question on how we collect data from these application servers. So there are certain prerequisites that has to be performed in prior before adding the application server. The protocol used by App Manager would be HTTPS or JMX connection. And there are certain ports in which your applications would be running. For example, for JBoss, it would be 9990, and Tomcat, it would be 8080. So your administrator might have provided a different port due to some vulnerability. So before adding it, make sure that you got the correct port from the application owner, so that can be monitored in App Manager as well. I'll quickly log into the prerequisite section to show what type of requirement you have to do in the application server before adding it into App Manager. So help.appmanager.com contains all the prerequisites for each and every monitor types. Over there, under Getting Started, click on Prerequisites for Applications Manager. So this section provides application servers complete prerequisite. Over this webinar session, we'll be seeing JBoss and Tomcat application server in detail. So I will show you the prerequisites which has to be done for JBoss and Tomcat. So in JBoss, we support all the popular versions of JBoss application servers, and each and every version has its own prerequisite, which are available over here. Similarly, for Tomcat, there are different versions which are available. So those versions prerequisites are mentioned over here. So before adding the monitor, make sure these prerequisites are performed so that you will be able to add that into monitoring. So from the App Manager UI, when a user clicks on New Monitor and Add New Monitor, we have the option of adding those application servers into monitoring. So under Application Servers page, if you are planning to add JBoss server, select JBoss server and enter the host name and the version of it. So we can select various versions over here and the port number. So the default port is mentioned, and if you have this application running on a different port, mention that port over here and you can add that into monitoring. So we also support Wildfly versions, and if you have a domain enabled JBoss application, so you can mention that as well and enter the domain controller name over here, and this will also fetch the individual nodes present inside the domain. And some required username and password, so we also have that option to enter the user credentials as well. And finally, the polling interval. So mentioning the polling interval, it depends like how much time, how frequently Applications Manager collects the data from the application server. So the polling interval, the minimum time is 1 minute, which means every minute App Manager collects the data from the application server. Similarly, we can check for Tomcat application server, where the host name and the port number, the default port, or in which port the Tomcat application is currently running, that has to be mentioned over here. And selecting the version is important. So make sure the correct versions are enabled and enter the username and password if required and add the monitor. So this is how a user should add the application servers into monitoring. Now we'll see some of the applications server monitoring in detail and how App Manager collects the performance metrics and how to generate alerts for those attributes. For all the monitor and monitor groups, there will be two status which are available by default. One is like health and another one is availability. Health is nothing but it depends on the multiple dependent attribute. For a monitor, so for an application monitor, there are multiple dependency like memory utilization, thread utilization, and a list of classes which are loaded. So these are some of the dependent attributes of health. So if any of the attribute violates the threshold, the health of the monitor will trigger the alert. So those alerts has three severities. They are critical, warning, and clear. And the availability, as the name states, it is nothing but the availability of the application server. So if app manager couldn't establish a connection with the application server, we trigger a down alert for that. Now, we'll see the Tomcat application monitoring in detail. So one of the important metric which a user must monitor is the memory utilization. So in the memory tab of Tomcat, we show the heap memory or non-heap memory usage along with the current used percentage and the free memory in percentage. As a user, the important metric here, it would be like free memory in percentage. So over this complete webinar, I'll explain you what type of attributes that a user can configure alert, and all of them will be in percentage. So here used memory in percentage and free memory in percentage are important, and the user can configure alert for that. So next, it would be JDBC connection. So you might have a lot of applications deployed in the Tomcat application server. So each application will have certain JDBC connection. So those connection pool details will be shown here, and along with the active connections in percentage, idle connections in percentage. So the attribute for which a user can configure alert would be active connections in percentage. And again, we have a web tab on web application detail. This shows the list of connectors which are currently in use, and each and every connector name along with the request count. How many requests went through with this connector, how many failure requests, and how many successful requests. As a user, the attributes for which you can configure alert would be successful request and failure request. So in case there are a lot of failure requests, I need to get an alert for that so that I can make sure the performance of the application is not getting affected due to that. So there are other parameters as well which we support in Tomcat application server. I will show that in detail over here. So in this page, click on Tomcat server, and I'll go to the one Tomcat which I've added. So in the overview section, a user can see the response time of the application, which is nothing but how much time it takes to connect the Tomcat application server from the application manager server. Thread usage is available. So if you might have a lot of threads performing different tasks, so that thread details would be shown up here. An application will have multiple class loaded for performing different operations. So that class details, and if that task is over, some of the class will get unloaded as well. So how many classes are currently loaded and the unloaded data can be shown here. And the complete response time of the application will be there. You have the 2x, I think, but the 200 response code, 300 response code. If there are any internal error, which is the 500 response code, those response code details will be monitored over here. Now we can see the memory. As we saw in the presentation, there are a lot of type of memory which are available, heap and non-heap memory, along with the used and free memory percentage will be shown here in the memory tab. So garbage collection data will be available. So garbage collection is nothing but the Java application itself will identify and discard objects that are no longer needed by a program so that their resources will be reclaimed and it will be reused. So performing garbage collection and the garbage collection which are happening per minute will be available in the UI. Thread details, thread pool utilization, busy threads. So those data will be available in the thread section. And the JDBC connection. So if my application got any database connection through the application, so how many connections got initiated, how many active connections, how many ideal connection. So that data will be shown up over here. And the list of web application data. So I have a web application hosted, which is the JPEG store. So from this page, a user can see the list of web applications which are available and the average response time taken to connect the application. And the servlets. Servlets URL can be monitored from the application manager page itself, and the response time taken for accessing each and every URL and the average request per minute, that will be monitored in this page. The configuration tab has the Java version and the Tomcat version of the Tomcat application server. So for all the attributes which we saw, a user can enable report and configure alert from the product. Now we'll see some of the metrics which we can monitor in JBoss application server. Even in JBoss, response time of the JBoss application server can be calculated, which is nothing but how much time application manager takes to establish a connection with the JBoss application server. Memory utilization and a statistical page will be there. So you can get a chart which shows the heap memory and non-heap memory utilization, and individual data is also available, where the free memory utilization and the used memory utilization is also available, as we saw in Tomcat. So user can configure alert for these attributes. So whenever the free memory is less, they will be notified with an alert for that. Thread details are also available. So thread and class is another important thing. So as a user must know how many threads are currently in use and how many classes are unloaded. So if the unload data, the unload metric is high, it means the performance might get affected at any point of time. So an administrator of an application should constantly monitor the thread and the class which are unloaded and loaded in any application. JDBC connections are also available. So if I have a lot of application hosted, so how many, what is the pool usage of that application? How many connections are currently established? Active connections, maximum connections used for this application pool, that will be monitored as well. Prepared cache will be monitored. So current size of it, what is the hit count and miss count, what is the hit ratio of that, that will be monitored. In addition to that, transaction data for applications will be monitored. This is an average value, where from this a user can see what is the committed, aborted, and if there are any timeout transactions, that can be seen in the transaction tab. We'll log into the product UI to see some of this detail. So from here, a user must go to monitors, JBoss server, and the overview of this JBoss application will contain the response time and the memory utilization, request failed for connector. So these are some details which we monitored in the overview section. JVM tab contains the heap and non-heap memory. As I said earlier, the free memory in percentage and used memory in percentage are some of the important attributes that an administrator should monitor. The JVM usage will be available as well in a graphical way. The list of threads, the live thread details, daemon threads, peak thread count, that will be shown as well in the monitor page. The count of class loaded and the total number of unloaded class, that can be monitored, and a user can configure alerts for that as well. The current deployments, so again in the JBoss application server as well, I have deployed a JPEG store application. So I can see how many servlets are available and what is the status of the deployment. The web application data, how many active connections are currently there, and is there any expired sessions or rejected sessions, that will be monitored in the web applications tab. EJB statistics along with the servlet details available for this JBoss application, and the JDBC shows the total number of pools which are currently initialized from the application to the database. So an administrator might have a maximum count that the application should use while connecting the database. So as a user, I can monitor that count as well. So if that connection is used to the maximum extent, an alert would be triggered for that. So available connections, active connections, maximum used connections, active connections in percentage, maximum connections in percentage. These are all like some of the important attributes that can be monitored, and the user can set alert for active connections percentage and maximum connections percentage. So these are the different connectors which are in use. So how many requests got initiated through these connectors, and what is the average processing time? If there are any request fail percentage, that will be available in this section. Transaction details, the average transactions which are happening with the application, and the total number of count committed transaction. If there are any transactions which got aborted, that will be available here. And the configuration tab as the host name of the JBoss application server, and what is the version of JBoss. So some of the basic information about the JBoss application will be available in the configuration tab. Now we'll see some of the detail about application performance monitoring, which can be done through Application Manager. So APM Insight is again a separate module, which is an agent-based monitoring. So the overall section which we saw before, they are agentless, and to capture application performance from the application server, we need an agent to collect the data. So APM Insight is an agent-based monitor. So we have 3 different agents available for Java, Microsoft .NET, and Ruby on Rails application. So if you have your application hosted on any of these application server, our agent can collect the data, and we can see what type of transactions are happening and what is the queries which got executed, and we show the individual method-wise details of each and every transaction. So like the application server, APM Insight needs some prerequisite which has to be performed in prior before adding it. So in the help section itself, I can search for APM Insight, and this shows the installation procedures for different agents that are available. Those are Java, Ruby on Rails, and .NET. So we'll quickly see the Java agent specification. So these are the list of application servers which we support. And in case if you have your homegrown application, and if you feel like you need to check the performance of it, and make sure that the Java of the application is above 1.5 or above, and those application has the JDBC drivers. So these are the list of JDBC drivers and the framework and component which we support. So if your application is deployed with this framework, and if that supports this drivers, then yes, that can be added through Application Manager, APM Insight. And again, .NET agent, like Java, there are certain prerequisites for .NET as well. So installing .NET agent will restart the IIS server. So before even installing the agent, make sure that you have a downtime set, so that during the installation process, the agent installation itself restart the IIS service. And now you might have another question on how we deploy and how the agent knows which application manager to communicate and show the data. So after the installation process, we have an APM Insight conf file which will get updated. So you have to enter the host name and the port number of the application manager which it should communicate, so that the agent will be transferring data every minute to the application server. So these are the list of prerequisites for the APM Insight .NET agent. So make sure that the application running on the .NET is on framework 3 and above, and the IIS version should be above 6. Now we can see what type of data we collect in APM Insight. In the overview section, we have the AppDex score and the average response time of each and every web transactions. So over here, we show the individual instance detail, also the complete application details. So the AppDex score is nothing but an open standard value. So you might have a question on what basis we show the performance of the application. So the AppDex is derived, we've discussed this with most of our customers, and based on their feedback, we've derived a score on 0.9 or above. So if the application has an AppDex score more than 0.9 and above, then it means like the users are happy with the performance of the application. Generally, the data will reside from 0 to 1. In case if the value goes less than 5, which means the application performance is very poor and the users are not happy with the performance of the applications. In the web transaction detail, we'll be showing the list of transactions that are currently happening. So whenever a user is accessing your application, so it will hit the application server. So those hits will be captured by your agent, and the data would be shown on the transaction page. So here the slow average response time, throughput, and most time consumed transaction can be seen. And on the right hand side, complete split up of individual transactions will be shown. Now, so when we capture the transaction, so each and every transaction will generate a query in the database. So irrespective of the database, whether it can be a MySQL or MS SQL or Postgres, so we capture the query details here, We have the agent on the application server, so there is no agent required on the database. So when an application server generates a query detail through the database server, so those query details alone will be captured over here. So complete query along with the average response time, throughput, and most time taken query along with the split up will be shown in the database tab. SQL query detail will be shown in the trace detail. So you might have a question on what is a trace. So you can set a tracing threshold for each and every transaction. So when a transaction exceeds 3 seconds or 4 seconds, I can set a threshold for that. So for that specific transaction, a trace will get generated. So using the trace detail, a user will come to know what are all the slowest components which are available and the complete individual method-wise details of the transaction and SQL statements which got executed during the time of transaction. So that will be available in the trace detail. And we have some background transactions happening in the application. For example, you might have some REST API calls getting executed in the application background. So those background transactions happening in the application level, also on the database level, will be captured in the background tab. And error tab contains the list of stack traces. So whenever a user is accessing an application, it might trigger some errors. So the page might not get accessible, or it might trigger some internal error. The page might get crashed. So those errors will be captured in the error tab. And again, we have the JVM metrics, which are captured as well. So the important difference between the .NET agent and the Java agent is the JVM metrics. So only in the Java APM Insight, we show the JVM metrics in detail. Over here, a user can see the memory utilization, Java CPU usage, garbage collection. A user can perform garbage collection from here. Thread usage details can be monitored in the APM Insight JVM tab. I will log into the product UI to show some of the important information which we discussed. So the APM Insight tab is available at the top, where I can see overall instance level and also in application level data can be monitored over here. So if I go to instance level and select this instance, I can see the complete overview of this particular application. So I have hosted this application in a Tomcat. I'll show how this works. I'm currently logged into the Tomcat. I'm accessing the manager. So these are the list of applications which are available, and the JPEG store is deployed over here. So I'm currently accessing it. So this is how a user accesses his own application, and I'm performing some transaction like this. Though these are some transactions which they will be using in a daily basis. And in case of a transaction if some pages get crashed, I'll be getting a stack trace like this. So using APM Insight, a user can track these error messages, and they will see why this error occurred and how to rectify this. So basically, this is a server level and a server level monitoring tool, so which is mainly used for DevOps. So a developer of the application will come to know why these stack traces are happening and in which way we can optimize the performance of the application. So the overview section has the AppDex and average response time data, and we have an option where I can set the tracing threshold. So if a user click on the gear icon, so the AppDex threshold, tracing threshold, and the sampling factor can be set over here. So I have the option of enabling the database SQL queries here. So enabling this option will collect the SQL queries which got executed during the time of transaction. So I can modify the tracing threshold. So for if a transaction takes more than 2 seconds to load, a trace will be generated for that. So the settings got saved successfully, and now in the web transaction, the list of transactions which we did now will appear, and individual split up of that will be shown here. So this is the complete split up of it, and I can sort it by most time consuming as well. So this specific transaction took a lot of time to load, and the reason is the servlet took a long time to load it for this transaction. So this is how a developer of the application can analyze the performance. The database section shows the list of queries which got executed during the time, and I can have sort by option to select most time consuming or throughput, or if there are any errors, I can sort it in that way as well. On the right hand side, I'll get a complete split up of the database operation by callers. Now background, if I have any transaction happening on background, I'll get it. In case if there is no background transaction, I won't get any data. Traces for transactions would be available as well. I guess there is nothing available in this time. I'll choose a different day. Yeah. So there are different traces, and each traces will have the slowest components, and the duration for loading this specific component will be available, and the complete methods which involved in this transaction will be shown here along with the total time taken. And SQL statements which got executed. There is no SQL queries which got executed. That's why it doesn't show any data. The JVM tab consists of the complete Java usage of this application server, which includes the non-heap memory and heap memory utilization. Performing GC is also available. And the thread details. How many threads are currently in use, and aggregated CPU value for that. So in case if there are any deadlock threads appearing in the application, that will be monitored over here. And the normal configuration of the Java. So what is the version of it? What is the home path of the Java, and where the agent is actually located? The Java arguments of this particular application will be shown over here. The error tab comes as the list of errors. So we did some error during this time, and the complete stack trace of that specific error will get applied over here. So these traces, it will get saved in the application manager folder itself. So when the agent got hooked up with application manager, a specific folder called APM Insight gets created, and all these trace details errors will get saved in the APM Insight folder. So there is no loss of data here. Even anytime if you want to check the previous day data or previous week or previous month, the trace will be there in the applications manager directory itself. So anytime a user can check the trace details, and all this data can be generated in the form of PDF, which is available on the right hand side. Now we'll see about how to monitor a specific Java performance of an application server. So we have something like Java runtime monitor, so which helps to identify a performance of a Java in any application server. So adding this Java runtime monitor shows the heap memory and non-heap memory as we normally see in all the applications, and the thread usage of the application will be monitored over here. The runnable threads, if there are any blocked threads, time waiting, so those threads will be there, and we have an option to view thread dump and generate thread dump from the UI itself. So a user can view and generate thread dump from the same page, and this garbage collection tab is also available. So performing garbage collection can be done from the same page. So there are some prerequisites which are there to add the Java runtime monitor as well, like we do for other monitor types. So from the App Manager UI, new monitor, select Add New Monitor. So this Java runtime monitor will be available on the application servers. So a user must specify the host name and the port number, so which App Manager should communicate and collect the data. So a point to be noted here is this is not the default port of the application. So on the right hand side, you have the prerequisite. So a user must enable these arguments in the startup file of the application. So the 1099 is something like a JMX port, which application manager uses while collecting the data. So once this is provided, the Java runtime monitor collects the data. So I'm going to the monitor page, and in the overview section, the connection time, how much time application manager takes to establish a connection with the application, that will be monitored over here, and the memory usage, CPU usage, the Java CPU usage will be monitored over here. So enabling alarm for CPU usage and memory usage is important, as a user will come to know what is the current Java usage of this application and what is the memory usage of this application. And we also allow user to perform garbage collection. In general, this garbage collection will automatically happen in the application, but in case if you want to perform it, we have the option available in the UI as well. So performing garbage collection can be done. Thread details allows the number of threads which are currently in runnable state or live threads which are currently there in the application, and if there are any thread dumps, if I create a thread dump from the UI, I will be able to see those details over here in the history, and the user can see what are all the current thread details which are currently happening in the application. configuration shows the host name of the application and some of the other arguments, the Java arguments of the application. Action tab allows us to generate heap dump and perform garbage collection and view thread dump. So all these data, when you perform it over here, it will get saved in the applications manager directory itself. So there will be a folder created in terms of JRE over there. Heap dump and thread dump details will automatically get saved. So this Java runtime monitor allows us in terms of, like, in case if you have any in-house applications which are running and which we are not supporting in application manager, so the Java of that application can be monitored. So a user can see what is the performance of the Java of the application server as well. Now we can see different actions that can be configured for the product, and the important thing is the automated action. As we saw earlier, we have something like Windows service restart to restart a Windows service when it is down. Similar way, we have the option of triggering thread dump or heap dump for a Java application. So this automated action must have an action type, whether a user must create a thread dump or generate heap dump or perform garbage collection. And in case of thread dump, how many thread dumps must be created and what is the time interval. So if I need thread dump, 2 thread dumps in between 30 seconds, I have to mention the time frame over here and the host in which I have to perform this operation, that has to be selected. And a notify an email action is also available. So this user will receive the thread dump details, and in case of heap dump, the user will get an email that the action got executed. So this is one automate action which we have for Java applications. And a lot of users might have question on how to set alert for the application which we monitor. So we have an option where we have a lot of predefined thresholds which are available. A user can create a own threshold and configure alert for that. So over this session, I'll show you how to create an alert for APM Insight. So in admin section, we have configure alarms. So over the configure alarms, we have 3 different options: monitor, which is for individual monitor, and monitor group. If we have a monitor group where a lot of individual monitors are associated in the monitor group, a user can apply a threshold and action from monitor group. And monitor type is also available. So I'm selecting monitor type, which is a type template. So by applying a threshold or action from this page, will get overridden for all the APM Insight instances which I've added. So a response time, AppDex threshold, health, and availability. These are 4 metrics which are available for configuring alerts. Health and availability doesn't have any threshold. Availability is something like when the agent is down in the application server, an availability down alert will be triggered. And health, like we saw earlier, there are a lot of dependent attributes. So here, AppDex, response time, and availability, those are 3 dependent attributes for health. So if anything violates threshold or if the availability goes down, the health of the monitor will trigger an alert. So response time is one important metric. So as an administrator, I need to know what is the response time of the transactions which are happening in the application. So I can click on associate. So this shows an option to assign a threshold. So I haven't created any threshold. So from here in this page itself, I can create a new threshold profile as a response time. And what is the critical value? So I can select as 1500, and override existing allows me to override the same threshold and action on all APM Insight instances. And this configure actions at attribute level allows us to assign an action. So this can be email, or it can be a ticket, or it can be an SMS action. So I'm selecting email and a ticket action. So once this threshold gets violated, App Manager will notify that using this email and SMS action. So this is configured now, and I can verify that as well. Just a second. All right, the alarms got successfully configured, and that is applied over here as well. So similar way, I can set alert for application server as well. So when we take about application server, I can configure alert for JBoss server. So here, as we saw, memory utilization is one of the important attributes that our user should be monitoring every day. So here in the template, we have the option to set alert for memory utilization. So maximum free memory percentage a user can set, and in the same way, I can create a threshold for this. So this is basically a free memory percentage. So an alert should be set if the utilization is less than 5%. So the memory is less than 5%, App Manager will trigger an alert for that. And I can set an action. It can be an email, or it can be a ticket or SMS. So by this way, user can configure alert for the application servers and as well as the APM inside. Now we'll see what type of reports a user can generate from the product, and how to create custom dashboards from the applications manager. So in terms of reporting, we support trend analysis report and report for each and every monitor types. Using trend analysis report, an administrator can see what is the performance of the application the previous week or the last week or the last month, and they can compare it with the current day performance. So in the trend analysis, we show the history report, hour of day report, day of week, and statistical report. Heat charts are also available over here. And we also allow users to compare the reports. So in the compare report page for a single monitor type, so if we take JBoss JVM usage, and if I added like 10, 20 JBoss servers, I can compare the JVM usage for all my 20 JBoss applications, and I can see which of the JBoss server is utilization is high and which one has less utilization. So comparing reports option are also available. So in the product UI, when we go to the report section, we have the report available for application servers over here, and I can select any report for which a trend would be there. So this response time shows up the current response time of all my applications, and the trend of that particular monitor will be shown over here. So this by default shows last 7 days, and I can switch custom period, or I can see last month or this quarterly report as well. So individual day-wise report would be there, and the hour of day, day of week report. So in which day, what is the current utilization? So from here, what I can see is on Monday and on weekends, there is no data collected. So administrator can see why the data did not collect during the time, whether the monitor is down, whether the application is down, or what went wrong during the time. So our day of week report is also available. Statistical report, which has the 95th percentile and the standard deviation, can be generated, and heat chart reports can be generated here. So this shows what is the performance of the application. So the grayed out are nothing but there is no data collected during the specific time. We also have an option to generate availability report. So whenever an administrator logs in, he must know what is the availability trend of the applications. So availability of the applications will show the current uptime. So all my applications are available 100%. So whenever I log in, I can generate this as a scheduled report as well. And this report is available in PDF, CSV, and I can email it from this App Manager UI as well. So when we talk about these reports, there must be an option to schedule it as well. From the admin section, under reporting, scheduled report options are also available. So I can create a schedule here and name it as application. And a user must make sure that the status of it is always enabled. And the report type, a user can generate report for availability or for any specific attributes. So attributes can be response time or request report, HTTP sessions, thread details. So any attributes I can enable report over here. And the report period, is it going to be a today's report or last week report or last month report? I can specify the date and the monitor type. So right now we're discussing about application servers, and selecting application servers would generate this report for all the application server which I've added, and the time schedule. So I need this report every day, or every week I need this report, or every month I need this report. I can specify the time period here and at what time I need the report. So optimized, an administrator would generate every morning. So every morning he needs to know the downtime of the previous day. So that date and time can be specified over here. And how to send this report, either through an attachment or through a link. So in case of attachment, either it is a PDF form or CSV that I can mention. So this user will get the report, and if I need to mention a different user, I can create a new action and I can save that as well. So this report will send the information to the specified user. So the execution status will be seen in the scheduled report page itself. So these are different report options which are available in the product, and we'll see how to create a dashboard in App Manager. So there are multiple widgets which we support in dashboard, and a user can publish a dashboard. So in case if they have a specific NOC environment, and they can publish this so that their team will come to know what is the current utilization of all the application servers, and they can monitor it. We'll go to the product UI and see how to create dashboard. Now in the home section, the default dashboard always shows up. So here in the actions tab, I have the option of creating a new dashboard. So from here, a dashboard can be created in the name of application server. And the different type of widgets which we support can be selected over here. So I can select performance metric widget and tabular data widget, and for example, I can also see the availability and health status of multiple monitors. If I want to see what is the available, what if the application servers are available or if it is down, I can create a widget for that and I can publish it. And the last alarms, recent alarms that got generated from the product, that is also available. So upon selecting this widget, creating this dashboard, the recent 10 alarms will automatically show up. So a user will come to know the list of alarms which got generated from the product. And we'll see how to create widgets for each and every metric. So in tabular data, I'm going to select Tomcat server, the primary metric. I can select the average processing time and the period. So either the poll data is nothing but the raw data which gets collected every 5 minutes, and I have the option to select last week or yesterday's report over here as well. And along with that, the additional metric I can select as availability. So along with this primary metric, I can see the availability of my Tomcat application server. So this is how the data will look like. And again, I can do the same kind of task in performance metric. So this allows users to have a graph which shows what is the current trend of the utilization. So this can be generated for individual monitor or for multiple monitors. So I can select Tomcat server, and whether I need this data should be shown for all the Tomcat applications or a specified application server. Similar way, I can mention the attribute. So I can select the 200 response code and save configuration. So this shows the current usage, what is the response time I've got for the different applications. So currently the 2 other application servers doesn't have any 2x responses. So it doesn't have any data, and one application server has a 2x response, and along with the units, we show it in a graphical way. And the availability and health status of multiple monitors are also available. So I can select Tomcat servers and all monitors and simply save configuration. So over here in this page, so I can see the current availability and the health status of different monitors which I've added in Tomcat servers. So if the health is in red, it means like it is critical because some of the threshold might got violated. So over here, I've set a response time as 100 milliseconds for this Tomcat, and it got violated, which is why the alert is getting triggered. So the best part is, if I just hover my mouse over this health icon, I can see the root cause of why the application went critical. So a user can publish this dashboard. We also have an option to generate iframe. So if you have a different tool to publish dashboards, a user can simply copy and paste the iframe in that third-party application. so that it will get loaded in a separate tab, and I can have it in a wider screen to see the current trend of the data. And in case if a user doesn't have a different application, I have a print friendly icon over here. So this shows the similar kind of data, and this page gets refreshed based on the refresh time which a user has set. So a page gets refreshed and the current data will be shown in the UI. So from the user icon, we have a personalized tab where a user can set the refresh time. So it is by the minimum refresh time will be 1 minute, and I can have it till 5 minutes. So every 5 minutes, this page gets refreshed and new data shows up in the dashboard. So we are in the end of this presentation. Let's quickly recap on the points which we discussed over the course of webinar. So we discussed about the memory and thread details which got collected for the application server, monitoring JDBC details, servlets, detection of failed process and services, and how to configure an automate Java action, along with the list of reports and how to generate alerts and create custom dashboards. So those are the points which we have discussed.